Hey everybody, it's Chris, and today we are going to be talking about Druid Spells. And I'm going to be starting a series going over the Druid. I'm going to be doing some subclass ranking and talking about multi-classing, and I'm going to be talking about Wild Shape, of course. But I figure that Spells is the best place to start because that gives us the framework of what kind of things we're going to be doing with our Druid. So what I want to do today is talk about what I would consider the signature spells of a Druid. As in, if I was going to play a Druid, these are probably the spells I'd take. Alright, so we're going to get started. I'm going to do 1st through 9th level spells. I'm not going into cantrips in this video. If I go into cantrips for Druids at some point, I'd probably just do a cantrip video because there's so much to cover there. But we're going to go over 1st level spells first. Cure Wounds. Now, it definitely would have been Cure Wounds in 2014, but Cure Wounds got a lot better in 2024. It now has double the dice that it used to have. So it does a lot more healing. Now, if you are a 1st level Druid and you cast Cure Wounds, you can expect it to heal 12 points on average. 12 hit points with one action. So if you are in the middle of a fight and there is another character, an ally, that is close to going down or even has gone down, there is a very good chance that Cure Wounds will bring them to maximum hit points. And I've talked about the scaling for Cure Wounds as well. The scaling is fantastic, and that's going to be a theme for a number of spells I'm going to be going over here, especially the lower level ones, is they tend to be really good upcast as well, and Cure Wounds is. And if you are more interested in my reasonings why Cure Wounds is such a good spell, I have done a video covering the upgrade to Cure Wounds, which I am linking up above. In addition to Cure Wounds, it's not the only healing spell I think is really good for a Druid at level 1, because there is the Goodberry spell. Now, the Goodberry spell does not upcast at all. But the nice thing about the Goodberry spell, it's not a spell I'd be using in combat, really, but it is a great out-of-combat spell. And because it has a 24-hour duration, it is a spell that if you're about to take a long rest, and you're going to be getting your spells back anyways, you might want to just expend your spell slots on Goodberry. The thing that never gets mentioned about that, though, is if there's any chance that your long rest might be interrupted by a combat, don't expend all your spell slots on casting Goodberry because you can be caught in with your pants down. You can have no spell slots left. But Goodberry, first off, it can be a trouble for some kinds of campaigns. If you are playing a campaign where survival is a major aspect of it, and you are a DM, you might want to look at the Goodberry spell because it gives you a full day of nourishment with 1 berry, and every casting of Goodberry gives you 10 berries. So if you want, the characters to be scrounging for food and worrying about how much they can carry in their backpacks and stuff, Goodberry is going to ruin that kind of experience. So think about that. But in a more general sense, assuming we have the food we need to have, Goodberry gives you 10 berries. A character can use their action and eat 1, and it heals 1 hit point. So that's 10 hit points of healing. Takes 10 rounds to heal 10 hit points, but if you are out of combat, that doesn't matter. That brings us to our 2nd level spells, and Moonbeam, which is what I consider the best spell for Druids with their 2nd level spells now. Moonbeam got a lot better in the 2024 rules in that when you move your Moonbeam and you move it over an enemy, they take damage right then and there. That wasn't the case before. So Moonbeam becomes a very good spell. And I've talked about how strong Moonbeam is in a dedicated video, which I will link up above, but it shouldn't be a surprise that I have picked it here. What you do with Moonbeam is it creates a space laser, and it shines down over an area, and then on your turn you can move it around and blast all your enemies with it. And in between turns, if you can knock your enemies into it, they're going to take damage as well. Now, this is our first concentration spell that we are going to be covering in this video, and there will be a number of concentration spells. Though Druids used to have a reputation for all their good spells requiring concentration, I don't think that's the case anymore because a number of spells that used to be not great, got improved, that don't require concentration. So as we go through this list, you can see there's lots of spells that don't require concentration. I'll go over the final statistics for that at the end of the video. But this is a 1-minute spell, so this is one combat. You cast Moonbeam, you create the beam of light, does radiant damage, which is very reliable. Now it gives a Constitution saving throw, which is not my favorite. I wish it was a different kind of saving throw. But even if they make their save, they still take half damage. Now, it doesn't do a ton of damage, but once again, the upcasting here is very good, increasing by a d10 for each spell slot level. And that doesn't mean you're doing a d10 more damage total. That means you're doing a d10 more damage each time a creature takes damage from Moonbeam, which might be many, many times with a single casting of this spell. Now, there are a number of good second-level spells for Druids. Druids are not wanting for good spells with their second-level spell list. I have to give an honorable mention to Spike Growth. Spike Growth can be one of the most damaging spells in the game if you build around it. I've done that. There was a video I did about Grapple Death Squad. That I'll link up above. That's been tested in actual play, and it is crazy good. Now, with the 2024 rules, grappling works a little different, and Spike Growth Abuse tends to involve grappling, but grappling is still very good in the 2024 rules, and the improvements to the grappler feat in some ways maybe even make Spike Growth more deadly. The great thing about Spike Growth is you cast a spell. Now, it is also concentration, creates a 20-foot radius sphere, and creatures that move through it take damage, but there is no saving throw. And the further they move through it, the more damage they take. And that's kind of the key. Now, even if you're not planning around it, Spike Growth is a very strong battlefield control spell for that reason. It also creates difficult terrain. So you can do a fairly big area. 20-foot radius is not small. And creatures stuck in a Spike Growth have a tough time getting out of it and take a fair amount of damage doing so. So if you're fighting groups of not very strong enemies, Spike Growth can be a great way to really give you the edge in that kind of combat. The next honorable mention I want to make is for a ritual, and it's always good to get a few rituals on your spell list if you have good rituals to choose from, because they're the spells that you can cast without expending spell slots. And Augury is a very strong second-level ritual. It basically is going to allow you to ask questions of the DM that they wouldn't normally give you information for. It says here that you are going to tell the DM a course of action that you are planning to take within the next 30 minutes, and they have to tell you whether that's a good idea, a bad idea, both, or neither. The limit of Augury is if you start casting it more than once in the same long rest, there's a 25% chance cumulative each time you cast it that you get no answer. What it doesn't do is give you the wrong answer. So you can cast Augury multiple times, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But there's still a pretty good chance it would work even the second time around. If I'm playing a wizard, Augury is a must-have spell for my spell list. For a druid, it's a little tougher because it requires a preparation slot, but it's still a very good spell for them. Now, there are more second-level spells that could have made this list. I mean, I didn't even talk about Pass Without Trace. There's a lot of good spells for a druid to select from on their second-level spell list. I just gave you the three that would be my personal preference. We are on to our level 3 spells, and my pick for the signature spell for druid with their level 3 spells is Conjure Animals. And Conjure Animals, of course, is incredibly different than it was in the old rules. Now it's going to create a pack of spectral animals, basically going to take up 4 squares on your grid, and you can move it around on your turn. Creatures that are next to it can take damage. They make a dexterity saving throw. If they fail, they take the damage. If they make their save, they take no damage. That is one disadvantage here. There's no half damage on a successful save. The really nice thing about Conjure Animals, there's actually 2 really nice things about Conjure Animals. The first really nice thing about Conjure Animals is you can move it around, and it only requires that you move on your turn. So you move when you are moving on your turn, you can move your Conjure Animals. You do not need to take an action. You do not need to take a bonus action. So you can move it up to enemies, and they take damage. The second really nice thing about Conjure Animals is the way that it's worded in terms of a creature moving within its reach. And I talk about this in a video, which I'm linking up above, where I talk about how you can very possibly, and it depends on your reading, and it depends on your DM's interpretation, and your interpretation, of course, is important as well. But depending on your interpretation, you can have creatures take damage twice from Conjure Animals just by moving it to the same location. It is a really strong spell, either way that you interpret that rule. Another nice thing about Conjure Animals is, guess what? Yep, it upcasts really well, increasing damage by a d10 for each spell slot level above 3rd. I have 2 honorable mentions for 3rd level spells, and the first is Aura of Vitality. Cure Wounds heals a lot of hit points. Aura Vitality heals more. Aura Vitality, 1 casting, 3rd level spell slot, is going to heal 70 points of damage on average. Now, it requires your concentration, and that's not 70 points of damage like, boom, you heal 70. It's spread out, so we're talking about 10 rounds of healing here, 2d6 each time, 70 on average. It also has no upcasting, but 70 points of healing when you're a 5th level character is a lot. You can bring up multiple allies up to full hit points, even if they are very, very wounded. So it is a really strong out-of-combat healing spell. As an in-combat healing spell, I do not love it. The other honorable mention for 3rd level spells, and again, I could have done more than 2 honorable mentions here, but I'm not going to go through massive lists of spells, but Dispel Magic is a very strong 3rd level spell. Now, not particularly unique to druids. Bards, clerics, druids, paladins, rangers, sorcerers, warlock, wizards. If you can cast spells, you can probably cast Dispel Magic. You pick either a creature or a magical effect, you cast Dispel Magic on it, and it's gone. And if it's a creature and it has multiple spells on it, they're all gone. The only exception are spells of 4th level or higher, and you have a decent chance of dispelling those as well. It does upcast. This is not a great upcasting spell. However, if you know the spell you want to dispel, and you know the level of that spell, and you want to be 100% certain that you're going to dispel it, that's when you would upcast Dispel Magic. So if you want to dispel that 6th level spell and you just want to be 100% sure you're going to dispel it, you cast Dispel Magic at 6th level, and it automatically dispels it. Otherwise, I would just stick with casting it at 3rd level. Now, obviously, Dispel Magic is not useful in every combat. In fact, in most combats, you're not going to use Dispel Magic. Dispel Magic, though, also has value outside of combat. There are certain exploration situations where you're going to come across spell effects, and Dispel Magic can be very helpful in those as well. We are up to 4th level spells, and my choice for the greatest 4th level druid spell is still Polymorph, despite the fact it's been changed with the 2024 rules. Polymorph is really good in that, number 1, you can either target an ally or an enemy. If you target an enemy, it's basically they make their saving throw or you win. If they fail their saving throw, you turn them into, a frog or something like that, and then you pick them up and put them in your pocket and dump them off at the nearest lava flow. However, it is also really good as a buff to allies, particularly when allies are really low on hit points. Now, the change from the 2014 rules is when you cast Polymorph with the old rules, the hit points of the target change to that of the creature. That's not the case anymore. Now the hit points of the target are supplemented by temporary hit points equal to the total hit points of the creature you select. It's still really good. Also, and I don't know if this is a huge deal for Polymorph, but if the temporary hit points get very low, so a creature is about to return to its normal form, if you have some other method of providing temporary hit points to them, you can extend their polymorph, because they don't lose their polymorph until you lose concentration, or the spell ends, or they lose all their temporary hit points. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to have to make these fairly small to fit on my screen, but the 2 kind of standard forms for polymorphing allies is first Giant Ape. So when you get to the level where you can cast polymorph, you're going to be 7th level or higher. And that means your allies are going to be 7th level or higher as well, which means Giant Ape is an applicable form that you can do right off the bat because it's a CR7 creature. 168 temporary hit points. That's a lot of temporary hit points. They get also a really good multi-attack, where they make 2 fist attacks, +9 to hit, 22 damage per hit. They also get a range attack, though it does have a recharge of 6, which means they're not going to be doing it every round. But they can do it once in a while, and it does 24 points of damage. Not too bad. Now, the T-Rex is CR8, which means you and your allies should be 8th level before you start polymorphing each other into T-Rexes. But 136 hit points is less than the giant ape, but it's still a lot, but the multi-attack is better. We are talking about 33 points of damage on average with the bite, 25 points of damage with the tail, and there used to be a rule where if you bit one target, you couldn't use the tail attack on that same target with your multi-attack. That is no longer the case. Now it says that if they are grappled by your bite, then you can't make a tail attack against them. So what you can do, assuming that you can multi-attack in any order that you want, is you can do the tail attack first. If it hits, they fall prone, and then you can do your bite attack with advantage, and if it hits, then they are grappled and restrained, in addition to taking all that damage. So offensively, it's a fair bit better than the giant ape. I need to give an honorable mention to Conjure Woodland Beings. Conjure Woodland Beings is like a Spirit Guardians, but better. And so, somehow it's still just the honorable mention here, but it's still an incredibly good spell. Concentration up to 10 minutes. You get a 10-foot aura. It does 5d8 force damage. Same upcasting of a d8 per spell slot level that you would get from a Spirit Guardians. This is just really, really strong. It's a strong emanation. Can be abused. I talk about how it can be abused up here. And if you are a DM and you're actually worried about it being abused, then this is the house rule that fixes that abuse. This is how I run it with one-shots I run, because although the players I play with are generally not the kind of players that want to ruin anything, putting this house rule in place just makes it super clear that there's not going to be any abuse with this spell. And it's such a tiny change. Just the yellow print has been changed, and those 3 words fix this spell. And I'd highly recommend it to anyone who's worried about abuse of this spell. And with these 3 words in, this is still a great spell. I would still take it with my druid. That's why I'm recommending it right now. My other honorable mention at 4th level is the Divination spell, which is also a ritual. This is going to complement your Augury spell. And this does consume a spell component, but it's not very expensive, 25 gold pieces. This spell puts you in contact with a god or god's servants. You ask one question about a specific event, goal, or activity to occur within the next 7 days, and the DM offers a truthful reply. So, ask the DM a question, they have to answer. Doesn't have to be a yes-no question. It basically gives you information that you normally wouldn't be able to get. Really strong ritual. Like with the Augury, has the same mechanics for casting it more than once. Now, if you're a DM and this becomes a problem for you, it does say here that you can be, you have to be truthful, but you can be cryptic. So give a cryptic response if you don't want it to just give them the information that you were planning for to be a challenge for them to get. On to 5th level spells, and my pick for the strongest druid spell at 5th level is Transmute Rock. Now, this spell is not in the player's handbook, so if you're not using old source books, you're not going to be able to access it. However, if you are using old source books, you will find this in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Transmute Rock is an amazing battlefield control spell because most battlefield control spells require concentration, but not Transmute Rock. It just lasts until dispelled, which means it's basically permanent unless somebody has a dispel magic. And what it does is it creates a 40-foot cube on the ground that turns to mud, and creatures in that area, their movement is just slaughtered. It's not difficult terrain. It is twice as bad as difficult terrain. It requires 4 feet of movement for them to move 1 foot. They also have to make consistent saving throws or get restrained. So even really tough creatures, you throw Transmute Rock and you catch a couple of them, and they're probably stuck in that area for at least a few rounds. There are other options, such as turning mud to rock, as well as having an area above, like a ceiling, turn to mud and then fall on enemies. Those aren't as strong. The one where you put it on the ground, that is just the really, really strong option here. And it is not concentration. So you do your transmute rock, they get stuck, then you do your conjure animals or whatever it is and move it around and just chew them all up. Despite the fact it's not in the player's handbook, have to include this on my list for best druid spells for their level. Honorable mentions. I got 2 honorable mentions at 5th level, and the first one is Wall of Stone. I love a wall spell, but Wall of Stone is exceptional. We talk about Wall of Force a lot with 5th level spells, and when we talk about Great Wall of Spells, I am not convinced that Wall of Force is straight out better than Wall of Stone. It depends a bit on the situation that you're looking for. Wall of Stone has some big advantages over Wall of Force. First off, it is way more flexible in the shapes you can create with it. And the second thing is you can't see through it. And so if you need to target an area, like you want to teleport and it requires line of sight, Wall of Stone is going to block you. Now, Wall of Stone, if you close off a creature with Wall of Stone, then they get a dexterity saving throw or they end up on the other side of the wall. This is very, very vague as to what it means by trapping a creature. There is definitely some DM interpretation there. But Wall of Stone is just a really strong spell. It also has strong utility use. And it is so detailed that I'm not going to go over this spell in this video. And it doesn't even all fit on the screen here. I have to scroll way down, all the way down to there to get the entire spell. Another honorable mention goes to Commune with Nature, another ritual spell. And like I said, I like to get some rituals on my spell list. Commune with Nature is a very strong ritual, and it is not available to anyone but druids and rangers. And this makes it a little bit unique as far as druid rituals go, because most druid rituals are available to wizards. And wizards, if you have a wizard in your group, they don't have to prepare them, so they just throw them in their spellbook and they're just there for them all the time. So then we probably don't want to prepare them. But Commune with Nature, we still want to prepare because our wizard can't get it. And it just gives us a ton of information about an area that is not like artificially constructed. So it's got to be a natural area. But it gives us 3 miles in all directions. We learned the location of settlements, locations of portals to other planes of existence, the location of one challenge rating 10 or higher creature of the DM's choice, that is a celestial, an elemental, fey, fiend, or undead, the most prevalent kind of plant, mineral, or beast, and locations of bodies of water. Very, very helpful spell. Also works underground. However, then the range is limited to 300 feet. But if you are in, say, the Underdark, this is very, very helpful. On to the 6th level spells, and the first spell I'm taking with my druid is Heal. Heal has a 60-foot range, 1 action to cast, heal 70 hit points to you or your ally. Now, you can heal a lot of hit points with Cure Wounds. I talked about that earlier in the video, but the Heal spell is going to restore more hit points, and it has range. So at 6th level, Heal is your much better healing spell. I mean, if you think about it, the 70 hit points that this spell restores is just as much as an Aura of Vitality that you concentrate on and heal for 10 straight rounds. That's how much heal is going to restore. 70 hit points when you are a 13th level character is going to be most of your hit points. You can be down to a third of your hit points, and it'll probably bring you back up to full. Now, I got to give an honorable mention to Hero's Feast. Now, Hero's Feast is not cheap. It requires 1,000 gold pieces to cast. But this is the one-shot spell. So if you are playing a one-shot where you are 13th level or higher and you are playing a druid, I'd take Hero's Feast. Because usually in that one-shot, they're going to give you at least 1,000 gold pieces worth of equipment. And you want it to be this spell component for Hero's Feast because it is a game changer for one-shots. Because it's going to give everybody... Now, it actually got nerfed in the 2024 rules, and it's still a must-have for one-shots. Gives everyone immunity to the poison condition, gives everyone immunity to the frightened condition, gives everyone resistance to poison damage. It also gives a higher maximum hit points to everybody. You can have up to 12 creatures buffed by this spell, which means not only are you buffing the entire party, you're buffing their mounts, you're buffing their pets. It just is really, really strong. Now, if you are in a campaign, I'd still probably take Hero's Feast, but it wouldn't be a regular cast. I'd get that gem-encrusted bowl, and I'd keep it in my backpack, and when we're going into like a campaign ending kind of situation, then I'm casting Hero's Feast to give us just our best foot forward, because it is a massive buff. So, of course, really, really strong. It also lasts for 24 hours, so you can potentially do it before you complete a long rest, so you can get that 6th level spell slot back. We are on to 7th level spells, and once again, my first pick is not from the player's handbook. So this is the second case where that's happened. And once again, it's from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and it is the spell Whirlwind. And Whirlwind is a deceptively strong spell. What you do is you cast it, concentration, 1 minute, creates a whirlwind. It's a 10-foot radius, so it's, not big, but it's not small. And you move it around, and creatures it hits make a saving throw. If they fail their saving throw, they are restrained and sucked up into the whirlwind. Then when you move the whirlwind, they move with it. And you can suck up creatures, and then they move up the whirlwind, and then they're tossed out. I did this recently with a wizard. I took this spell with a wizard. I still thought it was one of my best 7th level options. And the DM was so surprised when I used it because it just cleared an encounter. We were navigating a ledge on a big cliff. And I'm like, oh, whirlwind. So up went the whirlwind, and it went down, and it started picking up the enemies and tossing them off the side. And the DM was surprised because he's like, I've never seen this spell in use before. It's really good. Yeah, it's really good. I will mention that creatures have to be large size or smaller in order to be restrained by the spell. So pick your battles for which to use Whirlwind. My honorable mention at 7th level is also not from the player's handbook, but it's not from Xanathar's. It is from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, and it's Draconic Transformation. This is a 7th level spell you cast on yourself. It does require concentration and only lasts a minute, but the buff to yourself is impressive. And this is a bonus action to cast, so you're still going to have an action on your turn. First, Blind Sight. Not a lot of ways to get Blind Sight in the game, especially with a range of 30 feet. And this is really good, of course, if you're fighting something that's invisible in particular. Also can help you identify illusions. The big thing here is the breath weapon. So when you cast this spell, so the bonus action for casting this spell, and as a bonus action on subsequent turns, so you still have your action available, you get a breath weapon. That is a 60-foot cone. That is huge. 60-foot cone is a massive area. Creatures in the area make a dexterity saving throw, taking 68 force damage on a failed save, half on a successful one. So you get a pretty good area of effect as a bonus action on every single turn after you cast a spell, including the turn you cast it on. Really, really nice. And we're going to get wings. That gives us a flying speed of 60 feet. This can also really help with the positioning of the breath weapon. Very nice spell. Does have a costly component of 500 gold pieces, but that costly component is not consumed when you cast a spell. So it is a one-time investment, and you're good for your Draconic transformations. On to 8th level spells, and my pick for the strongest Druid 8th level spell is Antipathy Sympathy. This is available to Bards, Druids, and Wizards. This is an out-of-combat spell because it lasts for 10 days. And when you want to cast it is when you know the kind of creatures that you might be facing. Then you would cast Antipathy Sympathy on yourself, on an ally, on everybody if you want. And you choose between Antipathy or Sympathy when you cast a spell. When you cast it, you're going to pick a type of creature. So let's say we figure that we think we might be fighting a red dragon. So we're going to do Antipathy, Sympathy for red dragons. And who knows, maybe there'll be smaller red dragons that we fight as well. But at least one. So if we choose Antipathy, as soon as we get within 120 feet of that dragon, or it gets within 120 feet of us, it needs to make a wisdom saving throw. If it fails the wisdom saving throw, it gets the frightened condition, and it has to move away from us. and it has to keep running until it's 120 feet away, and then it gets another saving throw. Till then, it doesn't even get another saving throw. Or Sympathy. In that case, the dragon gets charmed and has to move towards us. So if you have those dragons that fly over and do their breath weapons and then they fly away, we can prevent that with a Sympathy. They have to come up to us and then we can smack away at it. And in that case, they don't even get another saving throw. It just works. And you got the whole party with the Antipathy Sympathy. That dragon, even if they got legendary resistances, they're making a lot of saves. So, they're eventually going to run out, and then they have to come up to you, and then you got to fight the thing. But it's not going to be able to do the big, strong tactics it was planning to do. Now, once a creature does make its save against your Antipathy Sympathy, it's immune to it for the next minute. That's actually not that long. This is a 10-day duration spell, so it might be a case of retreating and getting back, and then they're making their save again. Very, very strong spell, but it is an out-of-combat spell. But if you know what you're going to be facing or creatures that you might be dealing with, Antipathy Sympathy is a game changer. It also doesn't have to be the big bad guy that you're doing. If you know what kind of hordes they have as minions, Antipathy Sympathy is really good if you know what the minions are going to be. And I have to give Animal Shapes an honorable mention here. This is a 24-hour duration spell, action cast, that you can choose any number of creatures that are willing, and you can transform them all into beasts. Like a polymorph spell, except it can't be more than large size, and it can't be higher than challenge rating 4. So no T-Rexes, no giant apes. Still, it can be things like hippos or something. If you got enough creatures that you are doing Animal Shapes on, you can create quite a tough army. But there's also so much utility in it because you can do it out of combat and you can affect the entire party and turn everyone into birds, and then you can fly for a whole day, 24 hours. So it could be a travel spell or a burrowing spell. There's so many different kinds of things you can do with it. Very versatile. I'm not going to cover them all in this video. Maybe I'll do a dedicated video to Animal Shapes at some point, but it is a good spell, and I would be taking it with my Druid. On to 9th level spells, and we're going to go over a spell that requires some prep work. If you want to use Shape Change, you need probably access to a monster manual, and you need to do some homework. If you do that homework, Shape Change is in the same league as Wish in terms of the power of 9th level spells. And although it technically got one nerf, it also got a massive buff, massive buff over the 2014 rules, which is why I would say Shape Change is in the same league as Wish now. True Polymorph, by the way, got the same buff. Now, Druids don't get True Polymorph, but I just am going to mention that now because if you are looking at True Polymorph for a different kind of caster, look closely because it is very, very strong now. Always was really strong, but more so than ever. So with Shape Change, you cast a spell. It does require a concentration. And so if you're a 17th level Druid, you can pick any creature that has a challenge rating of 17 or lower. Only restriction, can't choose constructs, can't choose undead. You should also talk to your DM about what source books they allow because any DM worth their salt does restrict source books. But you can just use the monster manual and you will have fantastic options. Just like Polymorph, when you take that form, you get temporary hit points equal to the total hit points of that creature, which can be a ton at these high levels, right? Hundreds and hundreds of temporary hit points. Your game statistics are replaced by the stat block of the chosen form, except you keep your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma score, your hit points, in addition to your, temporary hit points, hit point dice, proficiencies, ability to communicate, and you still can cast spells. And of course, as a druid, we got a lot of spells. Now, this is going to require a concentration, so that will limit what spells we can cast. But if you need to cast a heal spell, you will still be able to do so. Upon shape shifting, you determine whether your equipment drops to the ground or changes in size and shape to fit the new form while you're in it. So you can actually change the size and shape of your equipment. You can't do that with Wild Shape. Another thing is, on your turn, you can use a magic action and you can change forms. So you can just pick the forms that do the things you want them to be able to do. Now, here is where Shape Change got a massive buff from 2014, True Polymorph as well. Those spells used to not allow you to take legendary actions of the creature. That restriction has been removed. And when you are choosing challenge rating 17 or potentially up to 20 creatures, they probably have legendary actions. They probably have really good legendary actions, and you can do them. Now, one really nice thing about Shape Change as opposed to True Polymorph is if the creature has spellcasting, you can use that as well. And a lot of them have spellcasting they can do with legendary actions. And so you can access those spells, burn them up, use a magic action, change forms, and then you got a whole selection of new spells potentially to choose from. Shape Change is just ridiculously powerful. Again, you got to do your homework for Shape Change. You can't just suddenly start looking at the monster manual that you never looked at before in the middle of a game. If you haven't done your homework, don't take this spell. Foresight is the spell you should take. Foresight requires no prep work, no homework, not even really any creative thinking. You cast it, takes a minute, and it lasts for 8 hours. And the creature you cast it on could be yourself, could be a party member. I usually like to pick somebody who does a lot of damage. And you touch the willing creature, you bestow a limited ability to see into the immediate future, and for the duration, which is 8 hours, no concentration on your part, the target has advantage on every D20 test they make. That means they have advantage on every saving throw they roll, every ability check they roll, including initiative, and every attack roll they make. And other creatures have disadvantage on all their attacks against it. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic buff. I don't think it's as strong as Shape Change. I don't think it's as strong as Wish. I don't think it's as strong as True Polymorph. I don't think it's as strong as Prismatic Wall, which might be stronger than Wish. I'll be talking about that in another video. But Foresight is still a very solid 9th level spell and easy to use. And that's not something that can be said of all 9th level spells. I'd highly recommend Foresight as a 9th level spell. And frankly, I'd recommend it anyways as a backup. Don't know what to Shape Change into, are worried about your concentration, cast Foresight. There you go. All right, and that's all the spells from 1st through 9th level that I consider the best for the Druid. And I have mentioned a total of 22 spells. You know how many spells a 20th level Druid can prepare? 22. All right, so you can fill your entire preparation list with just the spells that I've recommended in this video. And it should give you an idea of what kind of things I expect Druids to be casting and concentrating on, because that affects how I look at subclasses. It affects how I look at Wild Shape, because you might, cast a spell, be concentrating on it, and then Wild Shape, how does that look? Well, these are the spells I'm probably looking at. Let me know what spells I missed. Of course, there's your favorite spell, and I didn't mention it. Why didn't you mention Conjure Minor Elementals? Well, there's reasons why I didn't choose Conjure Minor Elementals. I think there's specific builds where that spell can be broken powerful, but your standard Druid ain't it. If you have watched the video to this point, thank you so much, but also thank my patrons who make this kind of content possible. My patrons enjoy all kinds of rewards. My Thaumaturge level patrons get the most. So check the link in my video description for my Patreon to check out the various levels of support. But Thaumaturge level patrons for $40 a month, they play D&D with me every month. I run a game, they play. They also play D&D with each other, and I often join in as a player for those ones. Then they also see all these videos early and without any YouTube ads. And also, I thank them in videos, which I'm going to do right now. So thank you to Bloody9, Brian Dunn, Atherzone, Brian, Chris C., Corel, Danktrain, Darastrix, Dewey, Cheatham and Howe, Douglas Reynolds, Dull Moon, Eden, Aaron, Eric Wasserman, FBKO5, Gish Life, Grizzly Badger, Henry Malinowski, He That Is, Heisenberger, Hunter, James Makla, James Sprague, Jiriru, John Matera, John Sullivan, Jonathan Zucker, Justin Times, Mark D, Math Guy Dave, PCZ, Quicksilver HG80, Ramen Goblin, Samwise Gamgee, Scott Parsons, Sarek Steel Eye, Tim Gerbafic, Warfare, and William Whittles. Thank you so much for your support, and thanks to everyone who's watched this point, and until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you next time.